Imagine this. 3,000 years ago, Britain's green hills echoed with the clang of bronze hammers and the roar of thriving trade. Massive stone monuments like Stonehenge stood as testaments to engineering genius, aligned with solstices for rituals that united thousands. Then, catastrophe struck. Villages emptied overnight, their thatched roofs collapsing into silence. Priceless treasures, axes, swords, jewelry, were buried in haste, never to be reclaimed. Populations plummeted by as much as half, leaving ghost landscapes where life once teemed. This wasn't some distant apocalypse in the sands of Egypt or the palaces of Greece. It happened right here in Britain, on the misty moors and fertile valleys. The forgotten Bronze Age collapse that nearly erased an entire civilization from the map. But why did it happen? What forces conspired to topple this golden era? And what chilling secrets does it hold for our precarious world today? Stick around as we unearth the shocking truth, piece by buried piece. Let's rewind to the height of Bronze Age Britain, spanning roughly 2,500 to 1,200 BC. This was no dark, primitive time. Far from it. Picture vast, undulating landscapes dotted with monumental stone circles. Stonehenge, Avebury, the Ring of Brodgar in Orkney, all engineered with astonishing precision that still baffles modern scientists. These weren't just rocks. They were calendars, temples, gathering places for feasts and ceremonies. Communities flourished under powerful chieftains who wielded gleaming bronze axes, swords, and spears. Symbols of authority and might, forged from the rare alloy of Cornish tin and Irish copper. Trade networks pulsed with life. Amber beads from the Baltic Sea, gold torques from Ireland, jet jewelry from Whitby, even exotic faience beads from Egypt. Britain was a tin superpower, its mines in Cornwall and Devon exporting the vital metal that powered bronze production across Europe and beyond. Farmers tamed the wilds with bronze sickles and plows, building clusters of roundhouses and open settlements. Rituals bound society together, elaborate barrow burials for elites, complete with chariots and weapons, communal feasting on roasted wild boar, barley beer, and hazelnuts. It was an age of innovation, long-distance connection, and rising prosperity, where social hierarchies emerged alongside advanced metallurgy. But dark shadows began to loom on the horizon. Around 1200 BC, the wider world, the cradle of ancient civilizations, shattered in a cataclysm known as the Late Bronze Age Collapse. In the Eastern Mediterranean, mighty empires fell like dominoes. The Mycenaean Greeks, with their legendary warriors, the Hittite Empire in Anatolia. Even Egypt's new kingdom teetered under assault. Mysterious invaders called the Sea Peoples ravaged coasts from modern-day Turkey to the Nile Delta. Their origins lost to time, perhaps drought-driven refugees or opportunistic pirates. Earthquakes reduced palaces to rubble. Prolonged drought scorched fields, triggering famines that starved populations. Trade networks, those fragile arteries of exchange, snapped under the strain. And bronze, that revolutionary material defining the age, required tin, a scarce resource. Britain, as one of the world's primary tin sources, suddenly found its exports unwanted. No more demand from fallen kings and crumbling city-states. Britain's economy, deeply intertwined with this global web, began to reel from the shockwaves. The evidence of this creeping disaster is etched into Britain's soil. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of hoards, deliberate burials of bronze artifacts, often intentionally smashed or broken into fragments. From around 1400 BC, these deposits surge in number across England, Wales, and Scotland. Take the Langdon Bay hoard, discovered off the Dover coast. Over 350 bronze pieces, including axe heads, spear tips, and swords, likely the cargo of a wrecked trading vessel from France. Or the massive Eilem hoard in Cambridgeshire, with thousands of items weighing tons. Why hide such wealth? Insecurity grips the land. Raids, perhaps from displaced continental groups, or internal rivals vying for scarce resources. Or ritual offerings, desperate pleas to gods for salvation amid turmoil. In southwest Britain, the uplands of Dartmoor, Exmoor, and Bodmin Moor tell a stark story. Ancient field systems called reeves, stone boundaries dividing farmland, show intensive agriculture thriving until around 1100 BC. Then, abrupt abandonment. Houses crumble, fields revert to wilderness. Why flee these heights? The climate turns traitor. High-resolution paleoclimate records paint a vivid picture of betrayal. Around 3,100 calendar years ago, roughly 1075 BC, a sustained period of extreme wet conditions descends upon Britain. Bogs expand, rivers overflow, and lowlands flood. Peat bog layers from Ireland and England reveal shifts in midge populations, indicating colder temperatures and heavier rainfall over decades. Pollen analysis shows a transition from dry-loving plants to wet-tolerant species. Oak tree rings narrow with stress. This marks the shift from the sub-boreal to the sub-Atlantic climatic phase, a wetter, stormier regime linked to changes in North Atlantic circulation, possibly amplified by volcanic eruptions like Iceland's Hekla 3 around 1159 BC, which blanketed Europe in ash and cooled the planet. Uplands, once marginal but viable, become boggy wastelands, unsuitable for crops or livestock. Farmers retreat to river valleys, but pressure mounts, more people competing for less arable land. Population dynamics shift dramatically. Estimates suggest Britain's inhabitants peaked at 1 to 2 million during the Middle Bronze Age, supported by expanded farming. By the Late Bronze Age's end, around 800 BC, numbers halve, the first major decline since the Ice Age's end. How do we know? Fewer settlements, smaller graveyards, reduced pollen from cultivated plants. Open villages evolve into enclosed ringworks. Then, from about 1000 BC, Hillforts proliferate. Massive earthworks like Maiden Castle in Dorset or Traprain in Scotland, fortified with ditches, ramparts, and timber palisades. These aren't just homes, they're defenses, suggesting rising conflict, raids, or social fragmentation. What ignited this perfect storm? The trade disruption stands as a prime suspect. With Mediterranean markets vanished, Britain's tin and copper exports tanked, devaluing bronze. Once a badge of elite status and a form of early currency, it lost its luster, literally and figuratively. Hoards of scrap metal suggest recycling efforts or symbolic destruction. Social upheaval follows. Elites toppled, perhaps by peasant revolts against inequality. Environmental degradation compounds the woe. Centuries of deforestation for charcoal and clearance lead to soil erosion, making floods deadlier. Disease lurks as a wild card. Broader collapse theories point to pandemics like smallpox or plague spreading with migrants. Internal conflicts escalate, evidenced by fragmented weapons and hordes, implying battles or ritual killings. By 800 to 500 BC, Britain enters a full recession, a 300-year gap where bronze is dumped in vast quantities, like the axe-head piles at Langton Matravers in Dorset. But iron hasn't fully arrived. Population dips further, beliefs fracture, with shifts in burial practices, from cremation urns to simpler inhumations. Yet, glimmers of resilience emerge. Recent studies from Cardiff University, using isotope analysis on bones, reveal continued mobility. People traveled hundreds of miles for feasting events, forging alliances amid chaos. Communal gatherings, perhaps at stone circles, sustained cultural threads. Finally, the dawn breaks. Iron technology, known in Europe since 1200 BC, reaches Britain en masse around 550 BC. Forged from abundant local ore, iron tools are cheaper and stronger than bronze, democratizing access. No longer elite exclusive, they boost agriculture. Deeper plows, better sickles, yielding surpluses that fuel population recovery. Society reorganizes. Hillforts grow into proto-urban centers. Celtic influences arrive with Hallstatt culture from the continent. The Iron Age blooms, but forever altered by the collapse's scars. Why has this cataclysm been forgotten? Unlike the dramatic falls of Troy or Ugarit, preserved in epics and tablets, Britain left no written records, just mute artifacts and landscapes. It was gradual, not a single blaze of destruction, and peripheral to the Mediterranean spotlight. Overshadowed by later glories like Roman conquests or Viking raids, this homegrown apocalypse slips into obscurity. Yet, over 1,000 hoards discovered to date whisper its tale, urging us to listen. The lessons echo loudly across 3,000 years. Interconnected economies are vulnerable. Today's global supply chains mirror those ancient trade routes, fragile to shocks like pandemics or wars. Climate change amplifies risks. Our warming planet spawns extreme weather, much like those ancient floods. Overexploitation of resources backfires, eroding the foundations of society. Inequality breeds unrest, toppling systems from within. In 2025, as we grapple with droughts, mass migrations, and economic disruptions, Bronze Age Britain stands as a stark warning. Civilizations rise, but they can fall fast. Ignore the harbingers at our peril. History has a habit of repeating. So, what do you think was the tipping point? Climate, trade, or human folly? Share your theories in the comments. If this journey through forgotten ruins ignited your curiosity, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into lost worlds, and hit the bell to never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Keep exploring the past, because it shapes our future.